Hi, everyone. Welcome to our session this afternoon. We're just going to wait a few more moments. We can see that there's people still joining, so we'll give the stragglers just a few more moments to join in, just as the rain hits in Sydney. Oh, we've got someone in the chat. Sharon can hear us. That's good. Okay. All right. Let's get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kelly Ryan Brown, and I'm the founder and director of Recovery Partners. Welcome to our session today, Assessing Risk and Prevention. This is part of our ongoing series of webinars that we host to help our customers and clients in their journey to provide a safe and healthy workplace. If you are interested in other events, they're all on our website. They're all complimentary and they will all take this same format where you'll hear from one of our very talented, and then after the event, sent the record and the slides from the presentation. So it's my great pleasure to introduce to you my very intelligent and clever colleague, Tima. Tima is a provisional psychologist, and she's a member of AHPRA, ASOC and APS. She has extensive experience in personal injury management and psychological claims, vocational counselling, motivational counselling and assessment. So Tima is going to run you through this session today. She encourages you to ask questions, so you can use the chat function down the bottom to ask any questions, or you can hold them to the end. So without further ado, thank you, Tima.
All right, thank you everyone for joining us. Good afternoon. Prior to starting our webinar, I would like to just send out a little warning. Some of the content may be triggering, and we'll be discussing topics that may be sensitive to some individuals. So please feel free to reach out at the end of the webinar if you need any support, and we'll be more than happy to provide it. So starting off, we're going to be talking about risk prevention and suicide prevention, or just even identifying risk and suicidal ideations. Suicide feels like a topic that's taboo, something that we shouldn't speak about. But as health professionals, understanding how to assess suicide risk effectively is a critical skill that can make a profound difference. Whether or not you've been in a situation where you need to assess risk, understanding how to respond to the signs of suicidal risk is a skill that can save many lives. ABS, or the Australian Bureau of Statistics, found that 3,249 Australians died by suicide in 2022. In 2023, 3,214 Australians died by suicide. That's an average of almost 9 people a day. And it's not just a statistic. It's someone's friend, family member, or co-worker. 1 in 2 young people are impacted by suicide by the time they turn 25, whether that's through exposure or even having a close friend or family member who has committed suicide or they've heard of suicide. So these are great statistics, and they're very, very large, as you can see. Also, 3/4 of all suicides in Australia are men. They are less likely to open up about their feelings or talk about what they're going through. And a lot of the times they hold back on all these emotions, and it becomes extremely overwhelming. Over 16,800 calls are made each year to ambulances from males experiencing suicidal ideations. Also, 9,000 calls are from suicide attempts. That's a really significant number. Also, additionally to this, we've got Indigenous Australians who die of suicide at a rate twice as high than non-Indigenous. As you can see, these stats and these facts are very extensive, and that is why it's so important that we identify the risk factors, try to prevent it from happening, especially in the workplace and when working with different individuals from different demographics. Now, the different type of risk factors can vary. It can be due to relationship problems, financial strain, mental health, loss, grief, bullying, a history of substance abuse, or even physical disability or injury. And a lot of us work with individuals who have sustained a physical disability. It is important to keep in mind that people who suffer significant injuries, especially those involving long-term disability or chronic pain, are at a higher increased risk of developing mental health conditions like depression and anxiety. Injury can have a huge impact on an individual's sense of self, independence, overall outlook on life. The physical recovery process can be long, painful, and isolating. This is where the mental health impact can really take hold. For some people, coping with physical pain, limited mobility, or changes in their appearance can lead to feelings of hopelessness, frustration, and in some cases, suicidal thoughts. But there are also warning signs, and that is why we need to be aware of these warning signs. Suicide doesn't always have a clear and predictable warning sign. There are behaviours that can indicate someone is at risk, but it is our goal to also identify these warning signs. Some of the warning signs, or the most common ones, are talking about wanting to die. For example, someone recovering from an injury might express feelings like, I wish I'd never gotten hurt, or I just can't take this pain anymore. They might be making preparations. So some people with long-term injuries, again, may take steps to prepare for death, which can be a coping mechanism or for overwhelming feelings. Risk-taking behaviours, they may engage in self-destructive behaviours, ignoring medical advice, or using substances to numb pain can indicate someone is struggling. Changes in their mood or emotional state, for example, someone dealing with a major injury may show frustration or sadness. If these mood swings intensify, or if they seem unusually calm after emotional turmoil, it could indicate that they are considering suicide. Feelings of being a burden, and this is very common and we hear it a lot, especially with people with physical injuries. Expressions like, everyone will be better off without me, suggest that individuals may feel like a burden to others. And this is where we need to ask the question. It is important to remember that asking the tough question, are you thinking about suicide, is critical. Many people are hesitant to ask the question, thinking that bringing up the topic of suicide might make things worse or give them an idea to do that. But in reality, asking shows you care, opens the door to support. For someone with physical injury, asking these questions can be essentially important because they may not feel they have anyone to talk to about their emotional distress. They may feel like they're already a burden because of their physical injury and don't want to express how they're feeling internally about how they cannot how they become immobile, how they are unable to actually do the things they used to do, how they are unable to work like they used to work and bring in, those financial incentives. A simple, I've noticed you've been really quiet lately. I'm worried about you. Have you had thoughts of hurting yourself? Can make a huge difference. And don't be scared to ask a question. Just by simply identifying some of these things, a simple way that I usually use is, I've noticed that, you've been a little emotional lately. Sometimes people in these specific situations may experience suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideations. Have you had any suicidal thoughts lately? Don't be scared to ask the question. That's the most important thing. Once you ask the question, it is important for you to listen and stay. Empathy is key here. Be direct and compassionate. Let them know you are genuinely concerned. It might feel uncomfortable, but saying, I'm really worried about you, is crucial. Encourage open communication. Ask how they're feeling. Reassure them that it's okay to talk about sadness and hopelessness without fear or judgment. A lot of the times they are worried about being judged. Listen without judgment. Allow them to express their feelings freely. Don't rush to offer solutions. Just be there to listen. Take their words seriously and remain calm. Acknowledge their pain without panicking. You can say, I can imagine what you're going through, but I'm here to help. A lot of the times in these situations, when we identify a risk or we're kind of assessing a risk, we might panic. We might think, what are we going to do? And when we panic, this may also make them feel uncomfortable, make them feel uneasy with the current situation of disclosing that information. So remaining calm, not panicking, and listening, and then deciding on what the next step is very crucial in this moment. So once you've identified the ideation, it's time to assess that risk. There are different levels of risk. There's low, medium, or moderate. There's also high. And based on the risk level are the different type of actions you need to take. Now, there are different factors that may increase the risk for an individual. Someone may say that they only have a suicidal ideation or a suicidal thought, but they don't plan on taking any actions, or they haven't thought about how they will do it. You would assess them as low risk. However, if they have previous suicidal attempts, if they have a means available, if you know all different type of factors that may also increase that risk, I would bump them up to medium. So we need to consider everything as a whole. We need to look at the bigger picture. But basically, when doing risk assessments, we look at the thought, the plan, and the intent. So when they plan to do it. So if we've identified a high risk, so they've got an ideation, they've got a plan in place, they know how they want to do it, they've got a mean, and they have decided on a date and time that they're going to do the suicidal act that they have planned out. This requires immediate action. Do not consult with your supervisor. Do not contact your team leader or your manager or panic or Google. That this requires you to dial 000. This is an emergency. This is a high risk. Any high risk, you dial 000. Whether it's to send emergency services out for a wellness check, whether to get them admitted into hospital so they can get the assistance that they need, whether it's just to make sure that the means that they have available are removed. This is a very important thing to remember. However, when it's a moderate or a medium risk, when you do identify that it's a moderate, you need to take the actions to make sure that they remain safe. And one thing is to make sure that they have the support they need. Are they seeing a therapist? Have they reached out to anyone or any support within their work, with their colleagues, with their family, their friends? Does anyone else know of these ideations that they have? Even low risk, I always come up with a safety plan. Who will you contact when you have these thoughts? What are the actions that you can take or do to prevent you from feeling this way? And you can always offer them different types of support systems. In Australia, we have the mental health line. That's the number for the New South Wales one, which all the emergency services are off 000, but every single state has their own mental health line. And when you contact them, they will tell you step by step what actions to take. Now, it's very important to remember that if we have identified a high risk, you need to remain with the individual. If you are in a face-to-face interaction with the individual, you need to stay with them until emergency services arrive. If you are on the phone with an individual, you need to stay on the phone and get someone else to make the 000 call. You can also provide them with the contact for Lifeline. Lifeline is usually for low risk, but I also still provide it for moderate and high risk. At another time, once the risk has been alleviated, they can always reach out to Lifeline once they identify that they have these thoughts and these feelings. A lot of individuals with physical injuries do have a lot of suicidal thoughts only because they get to the point of hopelessness, and that's when it's a chronic injury. So it's very important for you to identify if they are at risk, take the right action and make sure that they are safe. So what is your role? Your role is to identify it early. Initiate an informal discussion. Speak to them informally. Don't make it so serious. Just be calm, collected, show that you care, show that you're supportive. Take actions to assist. Ask them what you can do. Ask them if there's other people that can also assist. Manage presenting work issues or what is causing these thoughts. Listen to, but refer onto a professional issue. Provide an appropriate referral. So if they have not seen a psychologist or a psychiatrist or not seeing any mental health professionals for this issue, you can refer them to their GP, disclose to them about a mental health plan that we have in Australia, which allows them for free sessions. Once they go to their GP, they can develop that mental health plan. They can get up to 6 sessions, I believe, at the moment they are for free to address these things. Provide support, monitor and follow up, and remain objective. Now, what we don't need to do and what is not our role is to fix the issue. We do not diagnose. We don't provide counselling. We don't problem solve. We're there mainly to support. We don't judge. We don't disclose the issue beyond relevant parties. And we don't minimise or make light of the employee's concerns, because even the slightest ideation needs to be taken seriously. Before we finalize our presentation for today, I'd like to share a video which is very insightful. So I'm just going to share that video with you right now. Now, that may seem a little bit confronting to some, but the signs aren't always obvious. Sometimes the loudest person in the room is a cry for help. So it's always important to check in on those around you. Once you see a strange behavior or any change in any behavior, it's okay to ask someone if they're okay. So check in on those around you and let them know they're not alone. And hopefully, we can save some lives. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to take some now. I can see in the chat, some people said the video is loading, can't hear it. I'm happy to send the link for those that want to watch it.
Sorry, Tim, I think a couple of people had some, I think it was 2 people that had some internet issues, but we'll send the recording so they will be able to see it. I might just ask a question of you, Tim. Obviously, in the workplace, these things sometimes, obviously, with a close family member, we can be comfortable to ask these questions. But in my experience, sometimes managers and supervisors are unsure of their role. Like should they? It's a personal issue, and they're a bit apprehensive about asking some of those questions. What would your advice be to our audience? Is mainly people in the workplace, on how they can overcome that feeling themselves, or what guidelines would you give them to consider having these discussions with their colleagues and the people at work?
Okay, so it's always very confronting, especially when the first time you do it. Okay, there's never a good time or a right time to ask the question. There's never a good time or a right time to check in on someone, right? Whether it's a personal issue, whether it's a work-related issue, checking in is a sign that you care. It shows that you care. What I always tell people is put yourself in that position. If you're stressed and someone were to come up to you and ask you, are you okay? Is everything okay? You would appreciate it. You would take it in. You would acknowledge that they care. So how would you feel if someone were to come up and ask you, are you okay, when you were distressed? And if nobody noticed that you were distressed and they let it go, how would you feel about that? Now, another thing that I always tell people as well, which is very, very important, if you don't take that action and something were to happen to the individual, how would you feel about that? You know, sometimes it might break that rapport. Someone might get offended. Even when it comes to colleagues and you have identified the risk and you take the required actions like calling 000 or calling mental health services, that may cause a bit of an issue where they don't want anyone interfering, but you would have saved their life and they will know that later on. You know, I would rather save someone's life than live with the burden of not doing something about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And obviously the work that we do, we've had to intervene in those situations, and I'm sure some of the employers that have been they're joining us today have had to have those difficult conversations. What do you recommend for those people who have had to, the worst case scenario, they have had to call 000 because they're concerned for someone? Obviously that's distressing for them. What do you recommend for that person that's had to make that call?
Always seek our support as well. You know, debrief with your colleagues, debrief with your supervisor. Every company has an EAP service. You know, reach out, utilize your EAP service. We think that we're resilient, that these things, they kind of resonate with us, and over time they start impacting us. You know, talk about it. It's okay to talk about it. People think suicide is a taboo subject, but it's so important to have that awareness, to know how to deal with it, and to be okay. You know, it's okay. We're human beings. We have emotions. You know, it's okay to be distressed about someone, you know, having suicidal thoughts, or it's okay to feel overwhelmed when you have to deal with a situation like that. There's vicarious trauma that can be transferred from the workplace or when dealing with these situations, and it's very important to maintain our own self-care as well. So reach out, you know, discuss it with someone, always debrief, always, and make sure that there's someone there that can guide you if you do need additional assistance, because sometimes you might not even see the signs in yourself. You may be depressed and you don't recognize it, but others can see it.
We'll just do a final check. It's a nice from Melissa has suggested refer to PLC or wellbeing coordinator for assistance in what and how to say something. That's a really good idea. I think that sometimes we get tongue-tied, and having those phrases or those questions, as you suggested, are very helpful. Also, on building the relationship from the start, so if someone have a connection prior to incidents happening. A great observation, Melissa. I couldn't agree with you more. I think if you've built that rapport, it's much easier. And it's really about bringing that whole person to work and forming a relationship with them. So I
think when it comes to these particular situations, a lot of people are worried about breaking the rapport. They would have already, a lot of the times, you know, the individual, you've identified the signs, or, you know, you may not be very close, but you have some rapport with them. I think people fear that they're overstepping, or, you know, that they're going to break that rapport and that relationship. That's something that you need to overcome, because you need to think, I'm doing this for the better. I'm doing this for their sake. I'm sure this is what needs to be done, because if I don't do this, it may be worse. So it's very important to know the priorities. You know, what's your priority here? Even if you break that rapport over time, they will understand and they will be grateful.
Excellent. Thank you, Tima. I think your presentation was very clear. It gives some great direction and some great advice for employers everywhere. So thank you very much. We might have one final question. I think there's just people are typing, but I think my internet is a little bit slow.
I can see people typing as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Fabulous. And thank you to everyone who has joined us. We certainly appreciate the time that you've taken. We will forward those resources to you via email. And as always, please reach out and feel free to register for our up and coming webinars. Thanks again, team. It was a fabulous presentation. Thank you.